Hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. Directions. Directions are one of the most important things to differentiate. Directions are one of the things that mess up English learners like nothing else. They may understand the content, but they don't know what to do, then they can't produce the work that you want, and you won't be able to evaluate it. So make sure directions are super, super clear. Break them down into as small segments as you can. If you have a complex sentence, break it down into multiple little short steps, maybe number them. If you can put a visual in, if you can use, especially for the younger kids, if you can have a picture of what to do for each step, that's really great. Also, if you're giving directions, if you include a demonstration or a practice even. And that may seem redundant, but that can be the key to students successfully completing material. I cannot overemphasize the importance of directions at all the levels, from the little ones all the way to the high school. That is the biggest thing I hear students struggling with in all the classes that I help them with, is that they don't know what to do. And the directions are often, more complex than the content material. So directions. Interaction, what I mean by this is make sure in your lesson, some of the lessons don't have either a pair or a small group activity. This should be kind of the core of your lesson, because pairs or small group activities, it can be either one, is when students really get to interact. So if you're having a nice group discussion, that's a great thing for part of the lesson, but only a few kids get to talk in a group discussion, you and the kids. It's very teacher-centered, which is okay for a little bit, but then you've got to have the kids working in pairs or small groups to a certain amount. And you've seen that in the videos you've watched, like the WIDA videos, where they do have some group demonstration discussion, but there's always time for kids to practice the skills and the materials and interact. Super important. So your lesson, you're only doing one lesson with multiple differentiations, has to have that element in it. Just another kind of a pitch to use sentence frames. Sentence frames can be used in those paired activities. It can be used in that group discussion. We watched last class a video of someone using it in that group discussion. Sentence frames could be used in your assessments. That's fine too. So just remember to try to be inserting those whenever possible. They're super useful. They take off what's called the cognitive load of the student, so they don't have to worry about formulating that sentence. Instead, they focus on content. Something that always comes up is be really as specific as possible in your lessons. And what I mean by that is include samples of worksheets. So if you say, I'm going to give the students a worksheet, it's important. I need to see it, or at least a sample of it, so that I can see, how are you differentiating? Are the questions appropriate for each of those levels? Because worksheets will have to be differentiated. If you are doing videos, include the link to the video. That's easy, and then I'll watch it, and then I'll see, does that need to be differentiated? Make sure you're specific to what is it that you want students to do. Make sure that you have really clear rubrics or lists, or what it is. If students are doing some kind of research, make sure you have very clear what it is that you want them to do, so you'll be able to know, did they complete what you wanted. And students need to have real specifics. If you ask them to look for something, say, how many examples? Do they need 1 example, 2 examples? Be really specific, and then put that in your lesson. So the more specific you can get in your lessons, the better. Okay, put those things, include those things in your lesson. So for your pre-assessment and your post-assessment, those are for the unit. So remember, you're only writing one lesson in the unit, but you're describing what the unit consists of and what is going to be your pre-assessment for the whole unit, and then your post-assessment again for the whole unit. Now, some people are writing kind of little pre-assessments for their lesson. That's fabulous. It's really good practice to have like a little mini assessment. You can do that in your lesson, but that doesn't take the place of the pre-assessment that's for the whole unit. The one in your lesson can be informal, meaning that you don't have to collect data. It could be, so your pre-assessment could be maybe a little group discussion where you informally observe how students, what students know about something. The pre-assessment has to collect data to show growth. That's how you're going to show whether your students made growth or not. So you have to have something that either that you or they do something and you note down the data, or they produce some kind of artifact so that you can show, either it can be a picture, it can be a response using a sentence frame, it can be in a worksheet format, or it could be a matching. But you have to have some concrete data that you collect for your pre, and that you can do a post-assessment. And that has to be differentiated for the levels. So you can write one that you would use for a general class, but then you have to say, what is a level 1 going to do with this? So if you're asking students to do a quick write, for example, and I'll come back down into the WIDA standards. In fact, I'll jump down to that now. WIDA standards, if you're going to do a quick write as a pre-assessment, and you're going to collect that, and you can show growth with that, that's fine. But so WIDA, in level 1, it shows that WIDA, the WIDA candidate statement shows that level 1 students can produce short responses to questions. So they can't really produce what you would call a quick write. They can label charts, graphs, timelines. So a quick write for a level 1 student might be using a word bank and maybe some sentence frames. They might construct some really short sentences. So if I had my students that I have now, I have level 1 students in my ESL 1 class. If I ask, what do you know about mountains? And I would use a visual or describe describe the scene, I might say. It had mountains, and they might be able to write. They would be able to write, the mountain is high, but they would need me to have a word bank for that. They would need that word bank there to do that. So that's what a level 1 needs, a lot of differentiation. And then going back up to 6, native language materials. It's wonderful that people want to provide native language materials for students. We always want to do that. However, you cannot write this lesson depend on having them. So your lesson can't be depending that I will provide the connections for the students' native language by giving them native language materials, because you can't depend on having them. There's other ways to do that, mostly by asking students to what they can produce in their language. So they can put, what do they know what a word means? Do they know words? If you show them a picture of a sun, can they say the word in their language? And remember, you cannot depend on having Spanish speakers. Now, we can get a lot of Spanish material, but even with Spanish speakers, sometimes we can't get good language materials. And you can't always be translating everything. It takes a long time, unless you're a dual language teacher, and then that's part of your curriculum. But if you're a content teacher, you need to presume that you are differentiating your lesson without being able to get your hands on any materials. So differentiate in English for any student who comes your way. If you can do it without providing materials, if you can ask them a question, ask them to say something if they can, or to point something, or if they are at grade level, they can notate things in their home language. That's a great way to have them make connections. I often have students write things down in their native language. If I know that they read and write their native language, it's a great connection for them to make. Sometimes I have them say it for all the students. Sometimes I have that write it on the board, and we might have multiple languages, and that's great. That's because they can produce that. I can't get to those materials. All right. And then just the last thing is your lesson after. So tonight's is do the first differentiation. Next assignment is you're going to take the same lesson, and now you're going to differentiate this lesson for level 2 learners. So you're taking the same lesson each time and hopefully improving it, because we're always improving our lessons. Maybe adding that paired activity, improving in those instructions, kind of adding those details, putting those links in, developing those worksheets, and then you'll be submitting that lesson this time. You'll be submitting this to the discussions on Blackboard so everybody can see it, and you're going to paste it in, not as a file attachment, because I find the file attachments can take a long time to open. It slows everyone down. So just paste it in there, and then look and comment on at least 3 other lessons, and try to give other students some feedback. And you can compliment them, say what you like, Also, you might notice, you might have some ideas what people can add. You might have some ideas, some visuals. You might know, oh, I know this wonderful video, this great book. Or you can ask for clarification. You can say, you know, great lesson, but I'm not quite clear what you're doing here, and that will help us. That will help us. That always helps all of us with our lessons. And then the week after that, we'll be meeting in person, and you'll be sharing your lessons in small groups, you know, in our live synchronous meet. So I look forward to that. I always love seeing people's lessons. I love seeing people grow. The main thing is that you're taking this information and thinking about the videos we watch, the context of the students like Alejandro that you know, I've had him videos with students like Moises. Try to think about Moises when you're writing your lessons. You know, he was a student who had all this content knowledge, but he didn't understand maybe the directions. He didn't understand. So how can you make those words clear for him or any other student that comes up? Keep reading the Fairbairn chapter 5 will give you more ideas, more scenarios for differentiations, more instruction. Email me if you have any questions. I hope you're doing well, like I said before at the beginning, and let me know if you need to contact me if you need any help. I'd be glad to talk to you about your lesson, but we will be talking in class, and so you'll have time to ask specific questions and talk in groups. So with that, I will wish you a good week. Take care, and we'll be seeing each other in a couple weeks.